Welcome back to the live broadcast here in Melbourne at Cisco Live. We're going to continue the deep dive conversations, and next up we're going to talk about industrial networking security architecture evolutions. I'm privileged to host Michael Boland in the studio today. Michael is a distinguished systems engineer working in the sales organization, and for those of you that are close to Cisco, you would know that Michael and I sit adjacent to each other in the office on a semi-regular basis. Welcome to the broadcast, Michael.
Thanks for having me, Raymond.
So if we look at security risks, they are pervasive today. And with industrial networks, that potential of disruption of control systems and safe operation is increasing. Now, if we look at your topic that you want to cover at Cisco Live, do you want to provide a bit of an overview to the delegates on industrial network security architecture evolution?
Sure. We're all familiar with network architectures, and in the IT world, we're already going through the adaptation of that technology and architectures to accommodate security. But it's going to impact the industrial community more so. A lot of the networks are not refreshed and up to date. A lot of layer 2 networking. We need to bring in policy. We need to keep the industrial environment safe and production running. So to do this, what we're covering in my presentation is how security is impacting the designs of our networks, how we run through segmentation and other mechanisms to get the outcomes that we want in production from a production point of view. So it's not necessarily just a networking point of view. Okay. We're going to take a production point of view's perspective.
But that becomes pretty interesting, because traditionally, if we look at the audience and the people that attend Cisco Live, it's traditionally network engineers. Yeah. In this context, who is the real target audience that we are going after if we start talking about in the industrial network?
Well, it's bimodal. Of course, it's the network and security engineer primarily, and I'm helping introduce those people to the concepts that production people care about. But at the same time, it's also for a production control engineer or electrician to get a peek under the covers of the technology that they may hear about, but how is it evolving? How do I deploy it? And ultimately, how do I make it go away? I want it to occur under the covers. I want to automate it. In my presentation, I take people right up to the point where I say, we want to integrate that security capability inside our workflows and not have process control engineers being network engineers.
Correct. So a little bit of abstraction, simplification, and then automation that we are driving towards. Now, compared to conventional IT systems and platforms, how does security within the industrial system differ from the conventional environment?
In a technology perspective, and if you look at network designs, they are rather similar. The big change is in how you operate one. In a conventional university, it's often you hear that a student has brought in a virus and we would shut the student off the network temporarily, get their machine in and remediate it, and then let them get onto the network itself.
Correct.
In a control environment, I have two very big prime directives. I'm not just worried about what happens before, during, and after the attack in architecture, structure, and operations. I'm interested in make certain I maintain a safe production environment, and I also maintain production. So I just can't shut anything down. Yeah. I have to protect the things that can't protect themselves. I have to be able to run that part of the network and maintain it so that it doesn't infect the rest of the production environment. But I need to sustain production until I get the next industrial change maintenance window, in which case then I will be able to address the issue. Yeah. But I cannot take it down.
Yeah, and that's very different to the traditional, conventional environment that we work in. I would almost put it down as a high stakes game, because again, production, it might be oil and gas, so we can't necessarily just play around. There's other risks at play as well. If we change gears a bit to what you're bringing to the audience, can you give us a taste of one area of the design that you cover in your presentations?
Yeah, sure. A very large part of networking is segmentation.
Okay.
And I take people over the evolution of the technologies. In fact, I put all the technologies up there. And I challenge people to say, now think, which one technology are we going to pick? But I focus on 4. Virtual LANs, layer 2. VRFs at layer 3, virtual route forwarding. Firewalls, and then ultimately where the industry is heading to tags. So I evolve the discussion of introducing those, how we apply them in the model, what their scaling issues are, where should we apply them in the design, and then say, if this won't work, well, let's bring in the next one. And then we'll find out it too has limitations. So I want to use parts of it, but I also want to leverage another technology on top. And it's the binding of all those together in a systematic way, designing for industrial that lets us get the outcome we need. An infrastructure platform that lets us perform the security as per the way production wants to see it. Creating production zones of production and interconnecting those with conduits of connectivity and control. And doing it in a way that lets me meet those prime directives, maintaining production and secure environments. And securing, quite frankly, a lot of equipment which is very security prone. A lot of the protocols in this world don't have security in mind. So the network provides a wrapper around the outside to provide security for that which can't protect itself.
Very interesting. That sounds pretty awesome. Now, we talked about security design, security technology within the industrial space quite a lot. What other areas do you touch on in your session?
I go through the full gambit of design, and remember, I'm talking architecture. At the end of the day, I talk to customers and our partners here at the conference about how we build an architecture to accommodate this security design. I'm not doing a design. The design is custom to the user itself. But I go through the whole concept of what are the threats, where do they come from, how do we mitigate those threats in design, bring in production concepts and models that are well known and accepted, how do we adapt those? I take them on the journey right through to operations. So say, how do we operate? So we start off with the basics. If I can't see it, I can't manage it. But I need to see it to baseline my industrial network anyway. So I take them through the steps all the way up. And at the end, hopefully the viewer will come along to the same conclusion that we do, is the architectures that pop out the end are the logical response to this big tactical problem I have to evolve big flat exposed networks into scalable, reliable, secure infrastructure.
Wow, that sounds pretty awesome, and just listening to your overview, I definitely want to make some time to go and listen to the recording as well. That'll be really great. Moving on to the portfolio, it would be naughty of me if I don't ask the question on, are you introducing any new stuff that people would like to hear about?
Yeah, the presentation's largely about architectures, but we are at a Cisco conference, and Cisco does release products from time to time. So I do use Cisco products as an example, but only a couple of weeks back in Cisco Live Barcelona, we announced our industrial, our next range, our next generation of our industrial switching portfolio, and that is the IE3X00. We did already have an IE3000, but this is the next evolution. For people that know Cisco, it's our first iOS XE platform. What it does is it brings the industrial platform in line with programmatic control, as we do in the rest of our campus and data center switching products. But more importantly, it's the beginning with the IE3400 of the first industrial Ethernet switch, which has the hardware capable of becoming a fabric node on a Cisco software-defined access infrastructure. So eventually, not yet, eventually the industrial layer merges into the fabric completely.
That's pretty exciting. So basically what you're telling me is we now bring in the hardware platform with a UADP chipset.
Not UADP.
Not UADP?
No, it has a FPGA inside. But yes.
So, but with the appropriate capability so that we can bring it into our DNA portfolio.
That's right.
Design.
Because in the end of my presentation, we have to say, look, we have to take this complexity away. Intent-based networking is putting controllers in control of the complex underlying fabrics, and to mask that away and let me say, this is my intent, which is policy. I take the user on the evolution from TrustSec models, from converged plant-wide Ethernet models, through TrustSec models into intent-based models, and a firm understanding how the technologies all align, common architectures, but the management takes away the complexity.
Okay, perfect. Michael, I'm going to ask you one more question, and that's more around, we've got a lot of people that's worked in the, if I can call it the carpeted space for all their life. They've got a very good concept and understanding of providing capability to a customer in a traditional, conventional IT environment. But yet there's so much opportunity in the operations technology side, going into a manufacturing plant, into a mining environment, into a cannery, or anything like that. What guidance would you provide the listener on how can they help move themselves to get a better understanding of the two different worlds so that they can make a bit of a transition and support this almost merging of OT and IT over time?
Yeah, when I first entered the industry, I was an IT engineer, a development software engineer. I worked in the liquor industry. I was one of the only IT people to walk inside that brewery, and I had an inquiring mind. Ask the process control people what goes on, what's important to you, and ask why. They care that you understand their world and you're not going to hurt them. And the best way of doing that is to go down there and understand their world. They're interested in how you can bring your knowledge to the field to help them and interpret across this complex world of things that we take for granted at Cisco Live. We sit at these presentations, we consume this. A process control engineer did not. The last time they heard of technology, last one update from a vendor, what I learned at university, the world moves very fast. Correct. What they want you to do is adapt your world into their world. Talk about their world and talk about your technologies in their context. If you can do that, supplemented by looking at our Cisco validated design, CPWE, converged plant-wide Ethernet, and other documentation we do, and then in my presentation I also cover where are the design patterns and artifacts that come from industry. And everything's documented, all the acronyms are outlined in there. And start the conversation with your own people. Understand your own business.
Excellent. So the acronym CPWE, just for the listeners very briefly, where can they find the document?
Okay, the document's available in two places.
And it's called?
Converged Plant-Wide Ethernet.
Okay.
Okay, it's available on the Cisco site. Just search for CPWE, or it's also available from Rockwell because it was a joint developed control document.
Excellent. Michael, thank you so much for joining me in the broadcast studio. It was great talking to you and lots of depth that we've covered. Michael has already delivered his session early this morning, but you can get access to that session on Cisco Live on demand, and it'll be published with all the other sessions later in March. We're going to take a very brief break, and we will be right back here in the studio in a couple of minutes talking about multi-cloud. Thank you.